The other two were big hits. Home Fries was a wonk wonk.
I got it.
Home Fries?
Okay. No.
You have it on your list, is that what you're saying?
No. Let's do it.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yaniz Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob.
And this is Kai.
On this episode, we're going to be traveling back 20 years to the year 1998. Basically, the situation here is this weekend, there's not that much big coming out. I think we have the second weekend of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. You can listen to our episode on that, where Adam Barnard and myself broke that film down. But I think the big release this weekend is Sicario, Day of the Soldado. I didn't really hear particularly positive things on that. But I did go check out Ocean's 8, and I recommend that you all do the same. So instead, I had this, Kai and I were talking about, old classic movies. I think we even watched Clueless the other day, and I just had the idea, well, what we should do is 20 years, let's do like a 20 years in the Wayback Machine. Let's go check out, what movies did we like then? And if this, if this is fun for us and for you guys, maybe we'll do, we'll revisit some of the other 90s, late 90s era of filmmaking. So I just, to start with, Kai, we should probably tell the people what we were up to in 1998, because we're old now, so we were actually on this planet and, not wearing diapers or running around in elementary school somewhere. So do you want to start?
We actually just also had a birthday too.
We did have a birthday, and we're not twins either. We just coincidentally.
That's strange.
Well, you never know. This is Florida, so it's the South, so you never know what's going on here. But because we do have our birthdays pretty close together, same year and everything, which is a weird coincidence, and which Kai took a while to realize, I think, when we first started talking, I guess. Right?
Yes.
You embarrassed?
Okay, it didn't take that long. It took basically a couple months. I thought Rob was older than me, as I couldn't believe that we actually had a birthday only 5 days apart. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, so you're turning, 27. And he's
whatever.
Like, no.
Yeah.
Or, no, you're turning 28. He's like, no, I'm turning 27. I'm like, oh, it's like me.
Me too, yeah.
So pretty cool.
So in 1998, what were I guess you up to? And then, we were in pretty much the same place in life since we were the exact same age, but.
Well, I was a freshman year in high school the summer. I guess I just ended my freshman year of high school in the summer of 98 and about to enter sophomore year.
Yeah, same here. And where were you? I was in the same city I am now, and I think you were somewhere else, but yeah, just pretty much in Florida doing our high school thing and living our lives. And so that's what we were doing 20 years ago. And, it's notable that 97, the year before this, was the year that I really got hardcore into movies, where I started following the box office and actually caring about the Oscars and that kind of thing. So 98 is just, still my cinephile infancy, I guess.
Yeah. And it was also, when you're a freshman / sophomore in high school, it's also challenging to get to see as many movies as you get to see when you're more of an adult, because restrictions on the age to enter a movie theater and restrictions on money.
Well, there's that. But I feel like you have more time. It's always what is that? That's really great infographic you see on social media all the time, where it's when you're young, you have lots of time, but you don't have money. And when you get older, you have more money, but you don't have any time. And it's the constant dilemma of, I just can't seem to make this work. To get everything done.
You forgot the other one.
There's another one I forgot.
Energy.
Energy.
And then when you get older, you have all this time and all this money, but you have no energy.
Right, exactly. So how come we don't have energy or time right now?
Oh,
we have a toddler, so that doesn't help.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of our money goes to. Right. To toddler.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people actually, when they're in high school and they have more time, it's easier for them to. Plus, movie tickets were not as expensive. I think in '98, I went to see you could see a not a matinee, but the
an evening movie for like $5.
Yeah, but like the like between 4 and 6 or whatever, like that. You know what I mean? I guess those are matinees. But you can see like at a certain period of time, it was like, oh, cheaper tickets. It was like $4.50, I think. It's some.
Or maybe because it was also we were utilizing the student pricing, student admission, which they don't do anymore. So
I think AMC, at least, I thought they had like 1 day a week or something that they.
Yeah, but that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, but even like at that time, like movie, like the highest price was like $7, and now it's like, especially with IMAX 3D and Dolby and stuff, $20 for a movie ticket. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Right, and it also depends on the state that you live in, because obviously New York, California, they're going to be more expensive. But I guess for me, it's also I didn't see as many movies. One, because of the money thing, and also because my friends didn't really want to see movies. We went to the mall a lot, but it wasn't. We didn't go to see movies. It was just
they had a movie
walk
theater
around.
You guys were
actually the movie theater that when I used to live in the Orlando area, there was a movie theater called it's like the UC7 Plaza, and it was right near where the university is, but they have since closed it down. But it was a Regal Cinemas, and that's where everybody hung out on like a Friday and Saturday night. And so the movie theater, and then they had these like restaurants that all of us kids could go to, and it was fun. But it's changed a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, well, 20 years, a lot has changed in 20 minutes these days.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so that's what we were up to. I was getting hardcore into movies, and Kai was walking around the mall, being a mall rat with her friends.
Going to Wet Seal?
Oh God, I remember that store. I mean, I didn't shop there,
Limited?
But I remember seeing it. Oh, the Limited, your recently dearly departed Limited.
Yes, sad. I know. That one stayed for a long time.
So I guess. So for this, we're coming from, as you can tell just from this intro, we're coming from a very nostalgic lens. So I think we both independently sort of decided that we were basing our top fives probably more on our personal favorites than necessarily the, quote, best. And I know, for me, embarrassingly, there's actually a lot of movies that came out. And obviously, we're talking about movies that were released in 98, not, we could have seen them last year, but it was released in 98. It's valid for this list. But, there's a lot of movies back from 98 that I still haven't seen, like critically acclaimed ones that I just never caught up with. I've always been meaning to, and it's, I'm always trying to keep up with what's coming next and not necessarily setting aside enough time to go back and be like, oh, you know what, I should go back and watch Elizabeth or, I don't know, Rushmore, which I still haven't. I'm a little behind on all the Wes Anderson stuff.
That was 98?
Yeah, that was 98, but... Yeah, that was the first time I heard about Jason Schwartzman. Before he was in Scott Pilgrim. It's a little tease to what I hope to make an upcoming episode in the near future. And, or there's movies that came out in 98 that were huge deals that I may have seen like around that time or soon after on video, like Saving Private Ryan, which is a great movie, but I didn't get a chance to revisit it for this list. And I don't have recollect it well enough to confidently put it amongst my 5 favorite movies of that year. So did you have is that kind of the same for you with a lot of, as you're going through the list where you're like, oh shit, I haven't seen a lot of these, or you've seen them but you don't remember them really, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like it's funny because the movies on the list that we're going to talk about on my end, and then on my end, I think I did see these movies like pretty much the year they did come out. Mm-hmm. But there was some like Halloween H2O.
Oh, I saw
them. I vividly remember when I saw that in the movie theater. But that's not on the list.
It's not a very good movie.
And I think we saw that one recently, didn't we? Because we were doing a Halloween. I
think we even mentioned it on the podcast back like a couple of years ago or whenever, because we watched Halloween 2, and then Halloween H2O, because they're sort of, they're all the Jamie Lee Curtis ones, really. And then she's coming back this fall for the new Halloween movie it's gonna be a direct sequel to the original, so it's forgetting 2 through 8 or however many sequels there are, and just kind of picking up from there. So that should be interesting. I know you don't want to see that in theaters or possibly at all because you're not into horror movies, but I'll definitely check that out. I know a lot of people are cautiously optimistic on that. So that's sort of, I guess, where we were coming from as far as our ranking and as far as kind of reviewing the list. So here's one question that we didn't settle before I hit record on this. If we have overlapping, rather than us talk about the movies twice. Like if I say number 5, like pretty sure my number 5 is on your list too. If I say number 5 and you also have it, just tell me it's on your list, and we'll hold it until we get to your entry. Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Rather than just ditto. We'd already talked, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So I guess let's just jump into it. This is going to be a actual normal length episode, not one of our famous 2 hours Infinity War. So for number 5, I definitely wanted to get a straight up comedy on this list, and there were a few that I was looking at, but ultimately I kind of had to settle on There's Something About Mary.
Okay. Yeah. I thought about that one.
Oh, it didn't even make your list. I'm surprised. Because
it was pretty high up on the list for Box Office Mojo for that year.
Oh yeah.
And we both own it, but I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that movie.
Well, okay.
I like it, but I also think it's gross. I like it, but I also think it's gross and sort of a little overrated. And I also didn't even see it for the first time until 2003, 2004, which is funny because considering, I was telling you we were freshman, sophomore year of high school, basically. I had the kids I was in acting class with. Yes, I was in drama.
That explains a lot about our marriage and our personal life.
But the kids in drama class were improvising scenes for that movie. They're like my age. This is a rated R movie. I don't know who. I mean, maybe their moms took them or they went with friends that were older. I don't know.
Bought a ticket for, whatever kids movie was out at the time. We're like, oh, we're gonna go see this, Disney movie, and then whoop, right in the other side.
Maybe, but yeah. So they had kind of already saw it, and I don't know. I didn't. But when did you first see it?
I saw it on home video, I think, on DVD and that kind of thing.
Were you old enough to see it? I mean, not like that really matters in my life.
Same age,
movies, but
I mean, old enough is a loaded term. I mean, I was 14, I guess. I guess almost 15 because it came out in the summer. I don't remember exactly what date. I have the thing up here.
Yeah, I don't even know.
July 15th.
Because I was watching bad movies when I was 11.
So we had just turned 15 when this came out, and it was obviously it's actually I have the Box Office Mojo number 3 that year, behind Saving Private Ryan and Armageddon. And because it was a hugely phenomenon that year. And I don't even like the Farrelly brothers. That's the crazy thing of this making my list, because I've seen several of their other movies and I don't really care for any of them, including Dumb and Dumber, including Kingpin, and Me, Myself, and Irene, even though I love Jim Carrey.
But yet I like Kingpin sometimes more than There's Something About Mary.
That's interesting.
Which is weird, because
that was 96. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Something About Mary, I don't know. I think it's really funny. I think there's great performances in there from Ben Stiller. Matt Dillon is kind of the scene stealer of that whole movie. And so much of that film is just ingrained in my mind, like the ridiculous, obviously the thing with her hair and the fight with the dog. And, being in high school at the time, we were obviously really deeply entrenched into MTV. And so I remember this movie kind of sweeping a lot of the MTV Movie Awards with Best Fight. I feel like it might have either won or been nominated at least for Best Movie. And I don't know, and the fact that all the gross humor, which is not normally really my thing. I much prefer silly movies than gross in your face movies, which is why I like Scary Movie 3 better than Scary Movie 1, for example. There's kind of a heart to this film in a way. I mean, if you look at it from the objective of 2018's woke movement, I guess. It's also kind of jacked up that all these guys are just obsessed with this. They're all kind of sexually harassing this woman in a way. So from that perspective, it's a really problematic story, I guess. But in looking at these films in sort of a time capsule-y way, there's a lot of scenes and things about that film that are shocking, but also sort of impactful emotionally in the same kind of way. It ultimately does have the way they marketed it was, caution, a love story from the guys who brought you Dumb and Dumber or whatever. And I really like romantic comedies. Actually, one of my honorable mentions probably was You've Got Mail, because I do like that film a lot, and I've seen that a million times with my mom. So I really wanted to sneak a comedy on this list, and believe it or not, I didn't really see that many really great straight up comedies this year. Shakespeare in Love I liked a lot, but it didn't really make my top 5. Wedding Singer was like vying for the number 5 spot with Something About Mary. Rush Hour was a great one, but ultimately I don't think has aged as well for me. So yeah, so there's a little bit of justification for why I'm putting it on this list.
Yeah, you have a lot of movies that you saw in '98.
I've seen a lot of these. There's still some that I'm a little ashamed that I haven't caught up with, but yeah, for the top 100 here, I've probably seen 3/4 of them, if not more.
Wow.
So
that's really good.
So what about you for your number 5?
All right. I'm going to get some crap from you
probably.
And from the podcast world, but Urban Legend.
Oh God!
And this is even a movie that I wanted you to see when we got together. And the ending kind of goes off the rails a little bit, but I don't know. I just thought that was like a really interesting plot that they take urban legends and then they made like a kind of a serial killer out of it, and kind of the justification for it. I liked it. And at the time, these are all the hot upcoming actors, with Joshua Jackson. She doesn't really do acting anymore, but Robert Wagner's daughter, Natasha Gregson Wagner, was in the beginning of the movie. And that the redhead that I don't even remember her name.
It's not Rebecca Gayheart, is it?
Rebecca Gayheart was in it, yes.
But that's not the redhead that you're talking about.
No, that's not the redhead I was talking about. I don't think she's a redhead. She's a brunette with curly hair.
Oh, okay.
But no, the redhead, I don't remember the redhead's name. And then
Alicia Witt, right?
Alicia Witt, yes.
I just looked it up.
And I think Jared Leto was in this movie too.
Yeah, his name came up. I just looked it up. I see his face on the poster.
Yeah, and he was still super cute because he was coming off of. It was still around the same time of My So-Called Life, like only a few years later.
Michael Rosenbaum was in that. I forgot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, him too. So I don't know. It's just something about this movie. Like I saw it on the list and I was like, oh, Urban Legend, and that's one of the ones I actually recommended for you. So I feel like just because of that, I had to add it as
nostalgic pick.
Yeah, my number 5.
Squeezing
it's
it
just
in,
fun. I never saw the
list. Yeah,
I never saw the sequels or sequel. I don't know how many they had.
At least 2 sequels, I think. I feel like there's Urban Legends, and is that the one that's like subtitled Final Cut or something? I think.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah. So I just because it's like the only. I mean, I liked Scream too, but it's like the only scary movie that I've watched multiple times.
Yes. See, I didn't get a straight up horror movie on here. The next one I'm going to mention has elements of horror, but I really like to see if I would have gone with The Faculty if I was going for the teen horror movie. We just talked about that recently. Yeah. It came up in conversation.
Yeah, too. I know. I just also haven't seen. I just also didn't see a lot of movies in '98
right.
Because I was going to the mall, shopping.
That's true. You were walking around, not buying movie tickets. Bride of Chucky came out that year. A lot of people liked that movie.
Didn't see it.
Yeah, I didn't care for it. It's I maybe need to revisit it through a more mature lens, which is ironic that talking about that movie, like, that adulthood would benefit it. Okay, so number 5 for you, Urban Legends. For me, number 4, the original Blade. This is very on brand, I know, but obviously people listening to the podcast know that I'm a big fan of superhero movies, Marvel, DC, etc. And this was the first Marvel movie, I think, to be released theatrically, I think, because there was a lot of obviously the Incredible Hulk TV show. There was the like sort of B movie, direct to video, whatever, of like Punisher and Fantastic Four and things like that. But this is the first Marvel movie to establish, hey, did you know superhero movies could be a thing on the big screen? And I think it, in a way, X-Men kind of steals a lot of the credit. And I mentioned this either on podcast before or elsewhere on the website or other things I've written. X-Men kind of steals the credit for proving, hey, did you know Marvel Comics could be a thing on the big screen? Maybe we should make, a whole cinematic universe of this. And Blade was really the first one to treat it seriously. It doesn't before this is coming out a year after Batman and Robin and 3 years after Batman Forever. So it was like comic book movies were very campy and not really, this was probably one of the first superheroes to basically, their solution was, hey, let's put him in leather, in like a leather coat and have him like shooting guns and stuff. Actually, a year before The Matrix too. So then I feel like Blade was massively influential on not only superhero cinema, but kind of horror films in a way. This predates Underworld. And that whole look where it's basically Kate Beckinsale wearing a long leather coat shooting creatures in the night and she's a vampire. So it's very similar. Like, if you trace it back, Blade is directed by Stephen Norrington, had a huge influence on the next like 10, 15, 20 years, whatever, of filmmaking, action, horror, and comic book based. Plus, I think Wesley Snipes was perfectly cast. In fact, every once in a while you'll see an article where somebody will say Wesley Snipes is down to return for Blade 4, and even though he's like mid-50s by now, I would love to see that. I think he could still rock it, and whether it's a Netflix show or another movie, I think he would be a lot of fun back in that role. He has just the right balance of sort of dry wit on occasion, and like stoicism, and obviously the physical prowess to pull off that character. I also like Blade 2 a lot, but I feel like Blade 1 just, I don't know, something about that movie really hit with me. I also really like Stephen Dorff as the villain. I think Deacon Frost is probably one of the more underrated comic book villains out there. And, even though the third Blade movie kind of killed the franchise, I still hold the first two, especially the first one, in a way, in high esteem. And you hadn't seen this until I showed it to you, right?
No, I did not.
What did you think? What are your thoughts on Blade?
Yeah, I thought it was fun, and you're absolutely right. I think that it was a predecessor for, The Matrix and all that, and I think this may have been the last movie Stephen Dorff was in, and I liked him in the role as well of Deacon Frost. And Deacon is a great villain name.
It is. It is.
So just keep that in mind. Anybody that wants to name your son Deacon,
or don't name your son Damien either, because I think the Omen is still a thing.
Well, urban legend, the character's name was Damon, and sometimes I think that Alicia Witt would say Damien. I'm like, I don't think not Damien, it's Damon. But Blade was fun. If he does do Blade 4, I hope he doesn't call it in again, like the rumor said about Blade 3.
Blade Trinity was, obviously, people can look that up. It was a very troubled production. I think with that, he was very bitter about the fact that the studio and the director, who actually wrote all three movies, David S. Goyer, he also did Man of Steel, some of the screenwriting on that, and the Dark Knight movies. So he has his hands in all kinds of comic book properties. They were introducing Ryan Reynolds, Jessica Biel, as sort of stealing a lot of Blade's thunder, and I think that's part of why the movie suffers. Wesley Snipes is sort of disconnected, and the movie doesn't really know 100% what it's trying to be. Plus, it's funny that we talked earlier on the podcast a few weeks ago about Josie and the Pussycats, and Parker Posey's in that movie. It's sort of another like shrill kind of villain. But you haven't seen the third one. We'll get there at some point. But Blade 4 is great.
But maybe with Wesley Snipes, maybe he's more humble since his jail time, and maybe he really does want to get back into acting.
And it's by far his most famous role. I mean, it's the only really franchise one he's had.
That's true. So he's also in White Man Can't Jump.
I still need to see that. That's, again, early 90s. A lot of that I have to catch up with. So what's your number 4?
So you were talking about superheroes, and I would consider this a superhero movie in its own way. Mask of Zorro.
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Okay. All right. Oh, wow. I wonder how. Okay. Curious on how high this is.
I didn't think you would have that on your list, actually, for some reason.
I could see that.
Because did you before we'll get more into Mask of Zorro in a little while, but did you see that in theaters, or did you see that when I showed it to you?
No, I saw it. I guess it was in summer school, right before I turned 16. That it was geometry, and my geometry teacher decided to basically stop teaching us the last month of the summer school session. Nice. And he just basically brought in movies the rest of the time, and one of the movies was Mask of Zorro.
Everyone's favorite kind of teacher.
Exactly. So that's when I saw it.
Nice. Very good. All right, we'll get to that later. So my number 3, I actually have The Prince of Egypt.
Oh, okay.
And for a while, when this film came out, I think this would have been a little higher on my list. And the funny thing is that I'm not really religious, and it's obviously based on a biblical story. But even if you take away, if you're religious and you're a Christian, or even if you're Jewish, because the story touches base with both, obviously, that the film might resonate with you on a whole other level. But for me, even if you take it as pure fantasy, whatever, just a great story. The animation, I think, this was in the last few years of hand-drawn animation, sort of as the standard. The animation is really beautifully rendered. The characters are very stylized, very angular, which gives it a very distinct look. And the voice cast is amazing. You have Val Kilmer as Moses and Ray Fiennes as Ramses, and then you have Michelle Pfeiffer, Sandra Bullock, Jeff Goldblum, Danny Glover, Patrick Stewart, Helen Mirren, Steve Martin, Martin Short. There's like a bunch of really great actors in there, and the music is amazing. Like, I used to listen to this. I still have the soundtrack, and I used to listen to it quite a bit. It's very powerful, just as like a story of a family, sort of that came together just by pure fate. That baby Moses landing in in the palace in his little basket sent out by his mother so he could survive, and the relationship between the two brothers and how Moses' calling basically drives a wedge between them and makes enemies of the two of them. It's an amazing story for a lot of reasons, but it's just beautifully told in this movie, and just it's one of those films that really connects with me as a movie. In addition to how it may resonate with other people, as far as the religious side of it, I think it's just a high watermark for standard hand-drawn animation, especially for this last gasp that it had before CG kind of took over.
And what production studio was that one?
That was DreamWorks.
DreamWorks, okay.
And it was the same year that they had Ants, which I also like. There was a bunch of animated films that I considered for this list. I also really like A Bug's Life. I also very nearly put Mulan in here in this top 5 because I do like that quite a bit as well. But Prince of Egypt, just to me, it felt like the standout animated film of '98. So I showed you this one as well, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Yeah.
It was
a couple of years ago now. I remember because I brought this up with my mom and sister soon after we saw it. I guess it was to prove a point about something. I don't know, but I remember talking about it.
Okay. What did you think about Prince of Egypt?
I liked it. I had reservations about us watching it because kind of what you said. I'm not very religious, but I didn't really know the story about Moses.
Right.
And I think it was definitely interesting, and it was kind of feel like it was more metaphorical than just a documentary.
Right.
An animated documentary. It had more higher purpose than that.
Well, it's also, and this is kind of goes with most religious stories. It's like, if you want to believe them as fact, and you're like, yep, this is how it happened. This is historical document, to reference Galaxy Quest, I guess, with historical documents. Whether you take it as fact or not, it's really supposed to be sort of an allegory, teaching you a lesson, or trying to get across some form of moral. They're all really fables in a way, whether you believe in them or not. If you don't believe in them, you can view them as fables. If you believe that they really happened, then that's just the cherry on top, I guess, of the story that's trying to be told. If that makes sense.
Yes.
So, okay, cool. So you're number 3.
You had mentioned this as an honorable mention, but my number 3 would be The Wedding Singer.
Not a surprise. There's a Drew Barrymore movie there.
And I think I didn't appreciate this movie until years after it came out, after subsequent viewings of it. Because I definitely wanted to see it because I'm a girl, Drew Barrymore. And I don't think I actually even saw it in movie theaters now that I think about it. But yeah, no, it's just a really cute movie. And we were actually even quoted it this morning.
We did? What part?
We were talking about the jar with money.
Oh yes, we did.
And we watched Happy Gilmore recently, and I was saying that I kind of forget that The Wedding Singer is an Adam Sandler movie because it's so different than the typical roles that he plays, and I think that was really the only movie that Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler worked so well in. And I like 50 First Dates too, but
it's fine.
But yeah, The Wedding Singer is just a really cute movie. And I remember Drew Barrymore even said in an interview that was Julia was the type of person that she would have loved to have been. So again, it's just a cute movie. It's got good quotes, a sweet plot, and the soundtrack was awesome. I remember they even had like a deluxe soundtrack. They had like 2 soundtracks or something.
Yeah, they did. I don't know why. I think because we were talking about this the other day. But I actually went and they have both of the soundtracks on Spotify, so I'll probably listen to those one of these days while I'm doing work or something. And yeah, and the interesting thing too is that since this came out in '98 and it was set in I think '85, I feel like it was one of the first movies to be like, hey, we're set in the 80s, look at all the 80s stuff. It's like I Want My MTV, and then like the kids making a Freddy Krueger reference and all the songs, and it's wearing the Michael Jackson glove, and everything is just like 80s pop culture references, just like nonstop, interwoven with Adam Sandler actually playing a normal, sort of, in air quotes, normal human being, not a like ludicrous like man-child. Like he basically plays 95% of the time he does a Billy Madison Happy Gilmore riff. Just what if Billy Madison was a lawyer, or like was watching a kid, Big Daddy, or what if he was the son of Satan or whatever. I don't know. It's just he kind of plays a lot of the same characters, and I feel like Robbie Hart is very much an exception when it comes to his comedic work. I know he's done like Spanglish and Punch Drunk Love and things like that, but it's like it is an Adam Sandler movie because it has some of his people in it that he worked with a lot, like Steve Buscemi and Alan Covert and things like that. But it's also not because of the Drew Barrymore factor and the fact that he shows a more vulnerable side of himself, and it's just a really sweet love story, and it's actually one that I've told you this before, I think, that really kind of influenced like that long running project that I've been working on creatively, and it sort of influenced that dynamic a little bit. Although these two people are not together, they're in these other bad situations, and they need to find their way to each other. And even though that movie sort of falls into a lot of the romantic comedy tropes of, oh, he's got to rush to the airport to go and find her and declare his love and all that crap. It follows a lot of, it's very formulaic in some ways, but I don't know if it's the performances or the music or just the way everything's done, but that whole climax with Billy Idol on the plane and where he sings "Grow Old with You," it's just really sweet. And good choice. Like I said, almost made my list.
Thank you.
It was like 5.5 on my list.
I really did think it was on your list, but I also like the fact that Drew Barrymore, as I said to you before, is the one that got Adam Sandler on the project because she liked the script and she wanted to produce it and like really wanted to work with Adam Sandler, so they chased him down to get him on the movie.
I wonder what movie they saw. What movie of his they saw him capable of this kind of performance. It was not
a movie. It was Tamara Davis, who directed Gun Crazy that Drew Barrymore was in, had worked with Adam Sandler in the past, and she
probably told me this. It sounds familiar.
Yeah, probably did. She said he was such a sweet, good person, and I guess Drew loves humor and everything. So
right.
I don't. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Good pick.
Thank you.
Okay. So, and yeah, part of the reason I didn't pick it for my list, I think, where I was like, let me do this instead, is that I knew you'd have it on there. So I was like, well, let's try and minimize overlaps. So number 2 is The Truman Show. We were talking about this recently because we were out of town in a hotel and I'm flipping around and Truman Show was on, and it was the one scene where he takes Laura Linney and he tries to like leave town, like going past like the barricades and all that stuff. And I think this film, we were talking about this recently, this would be a good one to... And this is how the conversation about this podcast started. We were talking about that and how I was saying to you how relevant it is with now where everybody has a camera in their pocket and everybody's like, oh, waking up, eat my bowl of cereal, living my life, Facebooking Live or whatever. And this kind of takes that concept and blows it out to the extreme. But this was 20 years ago. This was before Facebook. This was before MySpace. And how relevant that was, and that this would be a good film to go back and talk about, even doing a commentary. Or you don't have this on your list, right? Before I keep going on about it.
No, I did not.
Okay, good. This would be a good movie to go back and do an episode on, kind of a retrospective, and then I expanded that out to, why don't we just do our top whatever of '98? And that's that's how we got to this episode. So
That's
the Truman
true.
Show started the whole conversation about let's just rank our movies from back in that year. But I think it's one of Jim Carrey's, it might be Jim Carrey's best performance thus far.
Well, he definitely got a Golden Globe, right?
He got a Golden Globe. He won a Golden Globe for this, and then he won a Golden Globe for Man on the Moon the following year. And then
Yeah, he said he was becoming the Tom Hanks of the Golden Globes.
yeah, and then lost the third one for who was nominated for Grinch, and lost it to George Clooney for Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But I think the Truman Show is a perfect balance of what he can do as a dramatic actor, but still has those moments where he sort of gets wild and crazy and kind of has like flare ups of his sort of out of control rubber face thing that he still does, but kind of recontextualizes that, and he plays kind of a very sad sort of like repressed character, and in that way I think the whole movie feels very metaphorical, in that the film is about him trying to break out of that the world that's he's sort of stuck in, break out of himself and kind of seek I just came up with this off the top of my head, but seek like happiness from the outside world and like get out of his comfort zone, that kind of thing. And in that way it sort of feels also like a natural extension of him playing Stanley Ipkiss in The Mask a few years earlier. So Truman Show, thoughts?
I like the Truman Show. Okay, I've actually only seen it a couple times, and this was a movie I saw in the movie theater. I saw it with my dad, and me and my dad had this tradition of every year there was a Jim Carrey movie, we'd see it in the movie theater together, and this was one of those ones. And I think when I was that age, I didn't get it. Like, I don't know. It's not like it's a hard movie to figure out, but I had questions, and it just didn't really leave like a lasting impression on me. And then I've seen it again since, and yeah, it's a good film. I clearly it's not on my list, but
when was the last time? When did we watch it together? Was it?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like we were on this like Jim Carrey kick for a while. I'm Ace Ventura and The Mask and Liar and
I'm eternally on a Jim Carrey kick.
I know, it's great. No,
I threatened to put on Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls the other day, which is not a high point of his career, and we'll probably watch that together at some point. But
I think I just like Liar Liar better.
Oh yeah,
no, that was the year before.
Yeah. Well, that's a straight comedy. This is like it's a different kind of movie.
Yeah, I know that it makes sense that he won the Golden Globe for this. I'm not taking anything away from his performance or the plot, but I think now in this day and age, yes, that movie has ideas in it that are definitely very pertinent now. But I don't know. I just don't like it as much as I should.
I can see that. I wonder how if you saw it now that you might appreciate it more, coming to it from a different perspective. And it's interesting because it's directed by Peter Weir, the guy that did Dead Poets Society, which is another movie I love. So I still think Liar Liar is Jim Carrey's best comedic, like straight up comedic performance. But why I think the Truman Show is special is because it finds a way to blend that with his more dramatic sensibility. And it's actually in the top 250. It's 198 on IMDb top rated movies.
Yeah,
which is cool.
That's not surprising. It was pretty high up on Box Office Mojo. I mean, there was that time that Jim Carrey, all his movies were blockbusters. Yeah, and that's why he was getting $20 million for each role he was doing. It
was number 12 in box office wise that year, which is kind of crazy considering it like almost made as much as Lethal Weapon 4. Truman Show is not what you would think a typical box office like draw is. It's not a blockbuster film really.
But it was Jim Carrey. He was able to bring people to seats. And that is as you know, this is an actual summer release. I think it came out July something?
I have it up here June 5th.
Oh, that's right, June 5th. Okay. Yep, so it was an actual summer movie.
Yeah, crazy. Great movie. What's your number 2?
Okay, I'm sure this is no surprise for you, but my number 2 is Ever After, and this was one of the last ones I added.
I thought it was going to be number 1, actually.
I didn't want to have all these Drew Barrymore movies, but 98 was a good movie, good film year for her. She had 3 movies, like we talked about earlier.
One we're not talking about.
Right, when we're not talking about that. I think I tried to watch it and I was bored or something. I don't know, but Ever After, this one I saw in the movie theater. In fact, I think I even tried to see it at the Thursday night screening, but it was but I don't think I got a chance to or something like that. Maybe I couldn't find a ride. But yeah, I read a lot about this movie before I even saw it, and just I think it's a really great modern tale of Cinderella, and kind of very empowering. Very.
What about the Hilary
feminist.
Duff movie?
I didn't see that movie.
Okay. I don't know. It's like a modern Cinderella thing.
It's just very feminist to me in a time when modern feminism wasn't happening, and I just think it's a beautiful story. It's great, beautiful cinematography. I like how they interwove Leonardo da Vinci in the story, and I really like the soundtrack. That's how I got into Robert Miles, actually, because they actually sampled from the trailer Robert Miles, so called Dreamland or something is the name of the album, but it's like a very instrumental.
Yeah.
It's an instrumental. Yeah. So if you guys are interested,
I remember where she's got the dress on and she's like, just breathe, and that they use that in the trailer.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you guys like that soundtrack, that's really, he's really the one that they sampled it from. So
what about Angelica Houston?
Yeah, and Angelica Houston was great, and one of the things I remember reading was that scene in the garden when she's like, oh, how could I love a pebble in my shoe? That scene was really hard for them to do because they really had found an admiration and respect for one another during filming, and both come from
Hollywood dynasties.
Yeah,
that's true.
So yeah, and
I always
and
forget
the sisters
that
were fun, and I like that it's one of the sisters was nice, and and people still quote that. They say, "Oh, I'm just here for the food." Like people still say that line.
That's true.
You remember what?
Sort of. I've seen this. I saw this once before we met, and then you showed it to me, and I think have we only seen it the one time together?
We've only seen it the one time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good movie to introduce our daughter to at some point.
Oh, for sure.
I always forget that Dougray Scott is in that movie. The guy from the villain from Mission Impossible 2. He was supposed to play Wolverine. I always forget that he's in that, and he plays the prince, I believe. Yeah, Prince Henry.
Yeah. I think it might have been one of his first
big like
roles.
Hollywood movies, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, I even had the poster in my bedroom.
Aw. Do you have the soundtrack to this too?
I got the soundtrack and I was disappointed because they didn't have the songs from the trailer. So then I found out about it.
Right.
My junior year my end of my sophomore year, and I was like, oh my god, it's the song, and then that's how I found Robert Miles.
No, it's a good movie, and I think it's interesting how I think you could tell that the mission statement here was we're going to strip the Cinderella story of all the fairy godmother thing, and there's no little singing mice or anything. It's just, what if this was treat it like a real story? Like, what if this was something that actually happened, and make sort of a more historical, grounded version of that story, and I think it does a good job of finding a new approach to a story that's been told like 4 million times, and something that feels distinctive and that's clearly resonated with a whole generation of moviegoers, especially women. It's funny that we're talking about Ever After, and then yesterday, this is sort of off topic a little, but it's still mid 90s sort of fairy tale storytelling. But I just saw on Twitter yesterday a whole thread of people being super excited that A Little Princess was on Netflix, and I was like, oh my god, we just watched this, and everybody's like, putting that I saw somebody put the GIF of that scene where she's like, all girls are princesses, that kind of thing, and it kind of, that just reminded, we're talking about Ever After, reminded me of that, and as a boy, as a man, I wasn't introduced to these movies in that same way, and it didn't resonate with me in that same way at that point. But looking at it now, I'm like, they're very positive movies for especially young women to watch, and representation obviously is still a big issue, and it's cool that they have had films like this that give little girls something to look at, that they can see themselves sort of reflected on screen, and see strong female characters who have their own agency and aren't maybe they're love stories or whatever like this one is, but they're not like her whole life is not centered on I need a man because that'll solve everything, you know what I mean? It's just part of what her heart desires, that kind of thing. And I think it's Little Princess and Ever After sort of kind of share that strong female like role model for little girls. So
Yeah.
good choice.
Well, one thing I want to also add about Ever After and how it's kind of like you said, a different take on that story is, Cinderella, the live action came out a few years ago, and I still don't think that movie was really that much of a retelling.
Right.
I mean, they've tried to modernize it up a little bit, but they still failed.
So basically,
I think
your point is Ever After is a better live action Cinderella than the live action Cinderella that Disney did.
Yes, that's correct.
I agree with that.
And I still like Cinderella. It was still a beautiful movie, but was not as empowered as the Drew Barrymore Cinderella was.
But her dress. Though.
Yeah. Yes.
Which got what got the Oscar nomination just for that dress, basically, or did it win it? I don't even know if it won.
I don't know. Well, Drew Barrymore's Cinderella had a beautiful dress on too, and had glitter. I don't know where they got glitter from in the 1600s.
Yeah, it's a little bit anachronistic, but whatever.
Anyway, okay.
Cinderella, 2015 or whatever. Cinderella did not win the Oscar for that dress, by the way. Just looked it up because I wanted to know. So my number one, obviously, is The Mask of Zorro.
Wow, I thought it was going to be, obviously I knew it was going to be high up, but I know it was going to be number one.
I love that movie. This is from Martin Campbell, who basically rebooted or, renovated the Bond franchise with GoldenEye, and then brought it back again with Casino Royale. And it's a kind of basically a passing the torch story about Zorro, being Zorro, who's initially played by Anthony Hopkins, who takes in this young thief played by Antonio Banderas and basically grooms him to take up the mantle of Zorro.
This is starting to sound like Ant-Man.
I can see that. It's a better movie than Ant-Man by far, but yeah. And it's interesting because they both have their own personal stories, and there's two kind of primary story threads that run throughout and intersect, and the two main villains that both of these men are sort of facing off against. But I feel like it's one of Antonio Banderas' best performances. The music is amazing by who does the music? I need to find this out. It was Catherine Zeta-Jones' breakthrough role, and to me it's one of those films like when you think blockbuster cinema, when you think you want to go see an adventure movie, you think of maybe some of the Marvel stuff, you think of the original Pirates of the Caribbean, and of course I'm thinking of more modern examples because that's what's coming to my head normally, and to me this is the perfect example of that old throwback style adventure tale, very swashbuckling in a lot of ways, where the sword fights, there's people in masks, and it's kind of a period piece, but it also has a very modern sensibility, and kind of marries romance and comedy and adventure, and it actually has some kind of creepy moments here and there, with a little bit of it's just very pure escapism entertainment. And to me this is probably not only my favorite movie from 1988, and again, there's a lot that I still haven't seen in 98, and there's some that I saw that didn't care for, for example, The Big Lebowski. I know a lot of people love that movie. It's never resonated with me. I just find it kind of annoying and over the top and overrated. But The Mask of Zorro is, I don't know, it has everything that in a movie that you would want, and it actually is one of those films that is well crafted. It's not one of those films that you see as a kid and you're like, oh, this is entertaining because look, he's got a sword, he's fighting this guy with a sword and he puts a Z on his face or whatever. It's very intricately told and plotted, and basically ridiculously high production value all across the board. And so to me, it's one of those films that I saw as a kid, and as I've continued to watch it as an adult, it's still I don't know, it stands the test of time, and I think that's the true sign of a classic film. And I know there's been a billion Zorro movies before this, but the fact that this movie not only is considered probably by millennials to be kind of the de facto standard bearer for the Zorro movies, at least of this last several decades since they made one previously, but that it still has surpassed its own sequel, which is not a very good movie in my opinion. And the fact that Hollywood's been trying to bring Zorro back, another brand, like, what about Zorro, but it's in the future or something like that. I've heard all kinds of ridiculous ideas. Yeah, I've heard all kinds of ridiculous ideas like that in the last several years, and nothing's happened with it. I think that they're like, well, fuck, we gotta like match or exceed the Mask of Zorro, and nobody's been able to figure out how to do that. I think that says a lot. And the fact that Zorro, and this goes back to the DC Comics back in the day, that if you look at the original Batman stories, that movie that they went to see was The Mark of Zorro, because in a lot of ways Zorro is basically a period Batman. He's he's an aristocrat who dons a secret identity to fight criminals and protect his land and all that. So it's so of course, me being a huge Batman fan, I'm drawn to Zorro naturally.
And it's also one of the older superheroes. I mean, Errol Flynn was the first Zorro. I mean, this obviously before Superman, before Batman.
Was he Zorro or Robin Hood, or both?
He was both. I believe he was both. Yeah, he was the main man of that time. But yeah, no, I just remember seeing it in my summer school class, and it was it was fun. And that scene where Catherine Zeta-Jones and Antonio Banderas' characters are doing the fencing, or the sword fighting was funny, and definitely Catherine Zeta-Jones was at her height, even though she had just gotten started. But she was beautiful, she was charming, and that's probably the movie that made Michael Douglas fall in love with her. Let's be honest here.
Well, everybody made Hollywood fall in love with her.
Yeah, because soon after that they were married, and yeah, Antonio Banderas when he was at his height too. And yeah, it's just a fun movie, and ultimately, yeah, he is a superhero. And it would have been interesting if instead of Antonio Banderas being the one that's getting the torch, if it was actually the story of the first Zorro, to kind of see that. But maybe it was similar to the whole Spider-Man thing. They didn't want to retell that again. Maybe Errol Flynn already told the story when he played the part. I don't know.
I don't think it was. I did research here a minute ago. I don't think Errol Flynn played Zorro, but there was also. But Robin Hood is like basically Zorro in a different kind of outfit, sort of. So
right.
I could see that there was like 1920 Zorro, the Mark of Zorro. Douglas Fairbanks, Tyrone Power played him. I think Guy Hamilton or something.
No, I don't even know these people.
Yeah, well, that's so like the 40s and 50s and things like that. But Zorro was huge back in the day, so it's funny that they brought it back in '98, and it was such a huge hit. Let's see, it was number 19.
They had a 1975 one too.
Yeah, there's so many of them. It's crazy. So yeah, Mask of Zorro, I love that, and it was number 4 on your list, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I think it sounds like it's the only one we're gonna have on both of our lists.
Yes.
So that's, yeah, definitely, and that just makes me want to go watch it now. And James Horner did the music, which is a very memorable score. And it has some of the best, I think, sword fight scenes that I've seen in a movie theater. And I did see that in theaters when it came out. So.
Well, one bit of trivia for the Mask of Zorro, or this character of Zorro, is actually came through as the Curse of Capistrano, a 1919 novel that introduced the character of Zorro.
Interesting.
And then it was republished in 1924 to be The Mask of Zorro.
Interesting.
Because of the film of 1920.
Right.
So there you go.
Very cool. So your number 1, I have a suspicion. But
my number 1 is Can't Hardly Wait.
I had a feeling.
Yes, because I hadn't mentioned it yet. So, of course, that was the one.
So, explain.
Okay, so I remember this was one I did see in the movie theaters. It looks like there's a running theme here. The ones I saw in the movie theaters seem to be on the list.
Well, it's like I said, your favorites a lot of times are going to be the ones that you have nostalgic ties to.
Yeah.
I saw my 5 in theaters, I think.
Which one?
I've seen all 5 in the ones on my list. I saw all 5 of them in theaters during the theatrical run originally.
Oh, yeah. So I remember when the trailers came out, all of us would say, I can't hardly wait for Can't Hardly Wait. And it was just something really cheesy to say. And but I was legitimately excited because it's like the perfect teen comedy. And this was a year before American Pie, which I think was just kind of more gross.
It's fine. It's whatever.
But Can't Hardly Wait wasn't gross really at all. And of course, hot upcoming actors with Jennifer Love Hewitt. Jamie Presley was in that. I don't think her character even had a name. Peter Facinelli that was the first thing I ever saw him in. So I saw him in that before he was in Twilight, and Ethan Embry was in that. Breckin Meyer, Donald Faison,
everybody from Du Jour. Everybody from Du Jour, which obviously the connection there is that Harry Elfont and Deborah Kaplan directed both this movie and Josie and the Pussycats, which I feel like now I'm fixated on about between the soundtrack and like the commentary of that movie and everything. So it's funny that your number one is the other movie that they wrote and directed together.
Yeah, no, I just this movie is just really, it's just fun, and it has some quotable lines. Like one of the lines I like is when they're like, "Oh, but he's like the hottest, he's like the most popular guy in school," and then Jennifer Love Hewitt's character says, "Yes, and school's over." Like trying to get out of the high school frame of thinking and start thinking about now living the rest of your life, because high school really doesn't really matter. And I guess that's really ultimately what the movie's about, is that, yeah, you can be popular in high school, or you can be a nerd in high school, you can be beautiful in high school, but after high school, nobody really cares. You can be who you want to be. And I just think, it's just one of my favorites. And I know I've shown it to you on VHS, because I didn't have it on DVD at the time.
Yeah, we still don't.
Didn't you buy it? I don't.
No, I think we're gonna have to correct that, especially now that it was number one on your list.
Yeah, and that was definitely the summer of '98 movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's been parodied, like in Not Another Teen Movie, they parodied it, and it's just, I think it has a good moral story to it. And
what is for people listening that haven't seen it, what is sort of the, I guess, what is the premise? Like, who's the main character and what does it follow? I guess it has a lot of different story threads, but the marketing really focused on that one kid that has a thing for Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Yeah. I mean, he really was like the main character, but it was kind of all of them. Like Jennifer Love Hewitt was the star, Peter Facinelli was the star. He was her ex-boyfriend. Jerry O'Connell actually makes an appearance. Yeah,
Sean Patrick Thomas from Save the Last Dance. Like everybody who was in those kinds of movies at that time is in that movie, it seems like.
Except Julia Stiles.
That's true. Julia Stiles was not there yet. Well, and she was in... Well, if we do a 99 episode, I'm sure Julia Stiles will show up there on your top 5.
And I also love the character of Kenny Fisher, which is played by... I can't even believe I forgot to mention this, but played by Seth Green.
Oh, we mentioned he was in Du Jour. We mentioned Du Jour was in this.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't mention his name.
Right.
And he had he had a bigger role than Breckin Meyer did. Mm-hmm. But he is hilarious as Kenny Fisher. And
we didn't say his name, did we? We didn't say Seth Green.
No, it didn't.
You kept saying you kept saying Kenny Fisher. You haven't said Seth Green, so let's mention.
I didn't say Kenny Fisher. Seth Green is Kenny Fisher.
No, I think we just said and I can't believe I didn't mention Kenny Fisher.
Oh, God, sorry, because I'm just assuming that everybody in the world has seen this movie. Yes, Seth Green plays the character of Kenny Fisher, and he was the standout in that movie for sure. And but yeah, it just kind of it just follows the story of the main teenagers, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Peter Facinelli, Ethan Embry, Kenny Fisher, and Denise, played by Lauren Ambrose, and kind of all of them going to this party and all the things that are happening at this party. It's
and it's interesting because it has a lot of the sort of hallmarks of a teen comedy. Like you can see the influence of, I guess, what would you say the prototypical teen movie is? Something like Breakfast Club. Basically, a modern teen movie.
Yeah, okay.
We could see that in like all the different, like, this is the geek, and this is the hot girl, and this is the jock, and this movie kind of reflects that. But it takes a little bit of a different approach. It also, I think the other thing is that the whole movie takes place during the one party, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So it's very much, it feels like a bottle episode of like a teen. It feels like a bottle episode of Riverdale or something. You know what I mean? Where all the characters are in one place and it all takes place in one night, and everything kind of emotions and everything sort of come to a head, and people get wasted, and then hijinks ensue and all that stuff. So it's kind of an interesting spin on, what if we took all the characters from all these teen movies and just put them in one place? What would happen? That kind of thing. And that's, I think I need to see it again too, though, because I only saw it the one time as you mentioned, on VHS several years ago. And I forget, I guess I had still have a VCR somewhere, right? We had to take that out of mothballs and let's hook this
exactly. Or we can just buy it on Amazon for like $5.
Yeah, it's like $4 or something.
Right, yeah, that's right, with those other movies. But yep, so that's been one of my favorites. And I remember even leaving the movie theater and like the next morning telling my sister about it. I'm like, you got to see this movie.
Did she ever see it?
Yeah, I think she did. And she's like, yeah, it was cute. And I think for me, I really liked Ethan Embry's character. I thought I thought the character was adorable. But now I have.
Is he the one that likes Jennifer Love Hewitt?
Yeah. And now that I'm older, I have more of appreciation for Kenny Fisher, Seth Green's character.
He's like the horn dog of the movie, isn't he?
Yeah, and he just like.
You're like, I like the gross guy.
No, it wasn't. No, it's just because he, like, basically he, like, one of the lines of the movie is Lauren Ambrose's character looks at him and she says, "Look in the mirror. You're white." Like, he was definitely cultural appropriating the black culture,
right? And
it's just absolutely ridiculous to watch it, but in a fun way. So,
very cool. So, to recap our top fives, do you have the list in front of you still? You want to just run through?
I do.
All
yeah.
Right, let me do that. I kind of cleaned up my list. Oh, so I had for number 5, There's Something About Mary. Number 4, Blade. Number 3, The Prince of Egypt. Number 2, The Truman Show. And number 1, The Mask of Zorro.
Okay, and for me, my number 5 was Urban Legend, Mask of Zorro, The Wedding Singer, Ever After, and Can't Hardly Wait.
So those are our top 5s of 98. As we said, these are totally subjective. I know a lot of people would not have Mask of Zorro anywhere near their top 5. Like I said, it'd probably be a lot of Big Lebowski, Saving Private Ryan, Rushmore, that kind of thing. Let's see. Other ones that I saw in 98 that I really liked that I haven't mentioned yet. Mulan. Enemy of the State, I liked a lot. Have you seen that? I never showed you that, right? Tony Scott directed Will Smith thriller with Gene Hackman. I also really liked Small Soldiers. I liked it at the time.
Didn't see that either.
Freddie really liked that. I need to show you that. I think it used to be on Netflix. I think it might still be. Freddie really liked that a lot at the time. So he had the toys, and we played the video game a lot on original PlayStation, back in the day. Also, Pleasantville is a good movie, directed by Gary Ross. So there was a few other like beyond honorable mentions, like my 11 through 15s, I guess would be some of those. I'm kind of surprised you didn't at least even mention Spice World, even though I know that was sort of a guilty pleasure for you at one point.
Yeah. No. I knew it was terrible. I like the soundtrack better than the movie.
It's guiltier than you thought. It's more guilty than pleasure, I guess. At this point, you're like, I don't know. I don't even mention it.
Yeah.
So,
well,
all right. I think that's pretty much all we have for this episode. This was fun. So maybe we can try and do this again another time at some point, either 97 or 99. And it'd be interesting to do all of our high school years, so like 97 through 2001, little by little, just to kind of run through and bask in the glory of our younger days, as we're now in our mid-30s officially.
Yep.
So that's all we have for now. If you like what we're doing here, please consider contributing to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Crooked Table. You can also rate and review the Crooked Table podcast on iTunes to help others find the show. Find me, Robert Yaniz Jr., on Twitter at Crooked Table.
And you can find me, Kai Yaniz, on Twitter at Volkey LLC. You can also find me on YouTube under Kai Yaniz for some weekly inspirations.
Of course, you can find more podcasts, reviews, videos, and other movie-related goodies over at crookedtable.com. Until next episode, I've been Rob.
And I'm Kai.
We'll catch you around the table next week. Roll credits.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
The art of a little KED.